remember that you have your own transition that you're preparing for, and it's important to start now and not wait. And I do think that starts with knowing what your needs are and reconnecting and rediscovering who you are outside of this role as mom, which is not ever going away. Hopefully, you're always going to be a mom, but you are getting, relocated to seasonal work now, and you've been laid off, so to speak. And so you have time to, thank goodness, to process what it is that you want to do next and what your identity will be now and will shift into. And that's where finding that sense of purpose, that new sense of purpose, one that can hopefully use your talents to give back to the world, to help change the life of someone, whether that's a family in your neighborhood that you can volunteer your time to help out with their kids because you loved being a caregiver, or that's you going back to school, or you to learn how to be a nurse or something where you want to change lives in that way, or starting a business or a nonprofit, or whatever that thing is that speaks to you, that wakes your soul up, that taps into your passions, your strengths, and your values. Taking that time to just spark that and seeing that as a reality and an opportunity.
Yeah, that's great. And I would say, hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Life After Kids with Doctors Brooke and Lynn. I'm Dr. Brooke.
And I'm Dr. Lynn.
Ladies, before we jump into the topic of today, I want to remind you to make sure, if you haven't already done so, you pre-order the Life After Kids book, Rediscover Yourself and Thrive in Life Beyond Motherhood. If you pre-order now at www.lifeafterkids.com/book, you can also get for free several bonuses that we've put together, including an accompanying guide that goes with the book, 74 pages of prompts and exercises and just things that'll really make the book not only come to life, but just take it's one thing to read it, it's another thing to put it into action. So you'll be able to implement all the things with that companion guide. So it's www.lifeafterkids.com/book. Dr. Lynn, tell them what we're talking about today.
All right. So we know this topic is very timely right now for those of you that have a senior or a child headed off to the military or what have you, or just getting ready to launch your youngest and heading into that empty nest. So we're talking about the summer before your youngest leaves, or your oldest for that matter.
Dun, dun, dun.
Because I think it's the first and the last that can be hardest, right? I have both. I have both happening.
Yeah. I would imagine, I still have my youngest here with me for a couple of more years. And the first two had launched back to back, as most of you know, if you follow us. I was just talking with a girlfriend yesterday at breakfast, whose youngest is leaving. And, there's something to be said. I don't know, at least just with my first two now, it hasn't been the youngest, but I feel like the first one was so hard for me because I feel like it's at least for me, it's less. I wonder what you think, Lynn, and maybe you won't know until after Lila leaves, but I feel like it's less about them actually like leaving home and like that you're going to miss them and all those things, because you do. But I think it's more about just coming to grips with you entering a new phase of life. Like it's like kind of saying goodbye to the chapter where they were under your thumb, and you were raising them, right? It's for me, it was that anyway, that I'm entering this phase where my kids are not going to be sleeping under my roof all the time.
Yeah. I think so. Just to clarify, when you said coming to terms with entering a new phase of life, you don't mean about like your own aging or your own, like, this chapter is closed and I'm not a young mother anymore, I'm now an empty nester. Do you mean that? Or do you mean just the actual, like, letting go of your child that you were in control of, like in terms of you knew where they were, then you knew where they slept, and helping them make day-to-day decisions, and you're not going to be doing that anymore, right?
I think it's both is I think what I'm saying. I think it's a little bit of both, but it's not just for me, it wasn't just on the surface of like, I'm going to miss them so much they're not in the house. There were so many more added layers.
Yeah.
And I think because like I was forced and hit head on coming to grips with that with the first one. And then once I acknowledged all those things and not only acknowledged, but just kind of processed it and got used to it and accepted it, the second time around, it was far easier.
Yeah, I think it's the unknown. It's those 2 points. And then it's also the fact that you really don't know what it's going to be like.
Mm,
And there's always a lot of anxiety around something that's so unfamiliar. You don't really know what you're stepping into, right? You're stepping into a void of sorts. And we don't, humans and nature, how we feel about that. But um, yeah, it's interesting because all the while you're experiencing those things, you're really wanting to make the most of it. And I think that I just made a reel about this because I'm living this. And I think on some reflection, I think there's a few key mistakes that moms make. And full disclosure, I've made them all, and it's
mm.
only July 1st. So you're all good. There's time, but I think it's important to talk through them. Maybe we can start with that, and then we can talk through some ways to really capitalize and prepare yourself, because after all, your kid's gonna be fine. You're gonna get the right dorm stuff, blah blah. That stuff's important too, and you're gonna get that. Who does a great job of that is there's quite a few sites on Instagram, and I'm sure you're following them all, and they do a great job of that. But we're here to help prepare you for this transition,
Yeah.
right? And we just want to make sure that you're aware that that's part of the summer work as well. Getting your kid ready is important, but you're also getting yourself ready for what happens next. So
Yeah, that's so good. You
yeah,
you said, but before you go on, I just have to say that was so wise. I think that comment that you made and that observation that it really is it's because it's the unknown. And like with anything, we tend to, I was just saying this the other day, we make the unknown just so much bigger and sometimes worse than it actually is.
always the build up. Think about the roller
Yeah.
coaster. The
Yeah.
worst part of that ride is when you're at the front and you're watching yourself go up, and you're just creeping, 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 and you just know that it's going to be. And
Yeah.
then the downhill comes, and then it's, you put your hands up and you're screaming and you ride the wave, right? And honestly, that's a lot of what I've been feeling and writing. And if you're there in this phase, please go back and check on Instagram and TikTok. Our content is different on both of those platforms, so you want to look at both. But a lot of my personal reels have been about that, just riding the wave and not resisting that so much as leaning into it. And it's counterintuitive, but it's self preservation, honestly. And I think it's one of the healthiest things that you can do is just lean into that. It is a void. It is acceptance of the unknown. It's acceptance of not being in control. And it's uncomfortable. And none of us likes being uncomfortable, but we all know that all growth happens there. And what can I love the question, when you're in an uncomfortable situation, when something is not going your way, or when things are really looking down, just there's some beauty in every situation. And I mean every situation, even the most tragic. And just asking yourself, where's the beauty in this? Like, what am I learning? What am I growing? And what can I use in this next season? Or what can I teach my child? How can I role model this better for them? I think there's beauty in that alone.
Yeah. I agree
Okay.
with you. What are you learning
Well,
in this
here's what
phase?
I learned doesn't work. So here's
Yes,
some of the
go for it.
mistakes,
Sometimes that's just as important as learning what does work.
right? So this first one is treating the summer like a checklist, right? So here's the story, because one of my pieces of advice is make a summer checklist. But on the other side, you have to balance the coin, and it can't all be because we did it and I was so excited. I'm like, oh yeah, these things are great, and I shared the list, and my whole family had it. And then pretty soon I was like, okay, well, we're only home this much time, and these things need like to be home for that. So we need to get 3 of these checked off this week. And
Yeah.
so there's a little bit of setting some good intentions, having some plans, but letting them go too, and appreciating that some of the best moments just happen in the quiet times
Mm-hmm.
with your child, and you can't really plan those. So I do think you don't want to just ignore the fact that time is fleeting, and like, if I hadn't done that plan, I would have gotten to this point and thought, oh, we have so much time left. And then realized, nope, we only have 2 weeks at home. And one of those weeks, my daughter's not here. Um, so there's that. Have a checklist, but also be prepared to let the checklist go.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think also, like, keep in mind from somebody who's on the other side of it is because I felt that way, like all these things that I wanted to do that summer before he left. And then you realize very quickly, spoiler alert, they come back. Like there will be next summer to do things with them, So don't
Good
I
point.
think what you're saying is right. Like be intentional so it doesn't get away from you, but also like don't put so much weight on
Yes.
everything that you
And
want to do that
pressure.
it becomes a chore and then nobody's having fun.
And then nobody's having fun. Yeah,
Yeah.
especially like we have to get to the next thing.
Yeah, that's
It's
not
already Thursday, July 2nd
get
or
to
July 3rd.
see the mouse running their rat race, the achievers that they are trying to get all
Yes.
that done.
Yep. Yep. Okay. The next thing, it speaks to that roller coaster ride, focusing on the goodbye that's coming. So, it's in the back of your brain, and you feel the whole summer a little bit like you're on that uphill climb, but you really do have to, I think, suspend that awareness a little bit. And again, spoiler alert, they come back. It's not
Yeah.
like so final that you're just all summer dreading it as it approaches. I think you sort of will miss the boat if you do that too
Yeah.
much.
Yeah, I think you have to do your best to compartmentalize. That's kind of where I was. I remember when we went on our trip to Portugal before Anthony was leaving, I was like, I heard so much noise from people. Like they had all the things bought and they had all the lists and and I had not done anything. And I was like, you know what? I'm staying right here in this present moment. Like I'll deal with all that when I get back and I'll say the good, like I know it's coming, but I just didn't want to do that. I just forced myself to compartmentalize it so we could enjoy the summer.
It's great. Okay, next mistake. Again, I've done all of these, so if you're there with me,
So you're not talking from
I'm
a
not.
high horse, you're
Hopefully, I'm
talking
not
from
alone.
experience.
Exactly, exactly. Avoiding the tough conversations just to keep the peace. So I
Oh,
think that is one where there are those times where you need to step in as a parent, and yet you're thinking, oh, they're only home for 3 more weeks, and I know this
mm,
is going to start a fight, and I'm just going to keep quiet, and they'll just have to learn. But again, you do have to discern the moments because they are still not fully functioning adults. I mean, there are some cultures that say, um, you know, sending your kids off at this age is to 4 years. There's some people that say that is just not the wisest thing because their cortex does not, their brain cortex that is not fully formed. So
hmm.
they still need help with decision making. Um, and yet we can't overparent in the final stretch either because we have to find those micro moments to let them exercise their own um, autonomy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And practice being in control and so forth. So I feel like those two, again, like there's like a double edged sword there.
Yeah. Yeah, you want them to do some of that and screw up too while they're at home so that they can figure it out for when they're by themselves or on their own.
Yeah. Yep. And, there are conversations that need to be had in that summer before they leave, and you can put it off. But I think there's something to be said about having the conversations about drugs and alcohol, having the conversations about expectations around how often you expect your child to check in when they're gone, what you expect them to spend. We were just at college orientation. I thought that was such a good tip, like to just, hey, this is a tough conversation. How much money do you think you're going to need per month for living expenses, or for shopping or for eating? And because very often that perception can be very different, right? You could be pleasantly surprised, but if you don't have the conversation, you'll never know. So
Yep.
just having those types of conversations and not pushing them aside. Maybe get those done up front so you can have some fun. Get them done right
Well,
first.
and not only that, not only so you can move on to the fun, but also is a way of being proactive to avoid arguments down the road. Because if you get on the same page, I mean, most arguments come from lack of communication initially, right? And so if you can communicate and be on the same page before they leave as far as expectations, I think you're going to save yourself a lot of worry and a lot of angst, and probably the same for your kids too, you know? So that's a really
Yeah.
good piece of advice.
Yeah. We just had a dinner conversation when we were away for the orientation, I think, which was just very simple things. And I let my daughter, respond to the question to hear her answer. And then her dad and I also weighed in. And it was just like, how often do you expect to check in? And she got to say what she thought was reasonable. And then, her father and I could have very different. So it was a chance for us all to voice that. How often? I mean, this seems basic, but it's important because how often do you expect to go to class? Right. And luckily, thankfully, and we know her answer was like everyone. But now we can, if that were somehow to falter and change, we can refer back to that conversation. Hey, remember when we checked in and this is what we said was the expectation? Instead of getting to November and be like, whoa, what's going on? And this is
Yeah.
a runaway cart here.
Yeah, that's good.
Yep. Okay. So the next mistake, and this one revolves around us as moms, buttoning up our own feelings about the transition too much because we don't want to burden them. And I think
Mm.
that there's another side of that coin where you're just always weepy and always like, oh, I'm going to miss you. What am I going to do without you? And making them feel guilty. And I don't think that's the right answer either. But I do think that you should be acknowledging those feelings and maybe talking to some trusted sources and people, and sharing it with your child in a way that's not burdening them, like along the lines of, hey, we're going to miss you around here, just so that they know, but that they also can be free to know that you're going to be fine. Like, hey, we're going to miss you around here, but dad and I are going to find some fun things to do. Or, like, and then when you do really need to discuss your feelings, going to other moms that are going through it, or whoever you would rely on for advice.
Yeah, and I think every kid is different there too. But I think overarchingly, it would be it's okay, let them know how you're feeling without making it so that they feel bad about going or like they're overly worried about you when they leave, because you don't want that for them either. But like, I know for sure my second son, if he saw me upset before he left, like I could definitely see like the beginnings of a smile on his face because I think it made him feel good. I think he really liked to know like how important he was
Oh,
to
I
me
see. I
and
see.
how hard I was taking
He
him
wasn't
going.
being cruel. He was
No,
just
it
like,
wasn't like it wasn't like a masochistic type, like good for her, she's suffering. It was more like, oh, I really am important to my mom. Like it made him feel good to know that he was that important, that I was going to be upset. And, so to that end, in some regard, it's okay to show that emotion. And it might be, it depends on the kid. Every kid is different.
that's
My
really
oldest one
good.
would have been like, "Would you get over yourself already, mom?"
Yeah, that's really good. Whereas my daughter, if I were to overdo that, she's going to worry. She's going to worry
Yeah,
about us and feel that responsibility.
right.
And certainly, I don't want to burden her with that because that is not something a child should worry about, right? That's my responsibility then to figure out my own stuff, and she's got plenty to figure out on her own. So, but yeah, I love that. I love that point too, like sharing that, because there are those kids that are really gonna be heartwarmed by that and really uplifted by that. It's
Yes.
great.
Listen, if there's one thing that therapy has taught me above all things, it's that a child should not be held responsible for their parents' emotions and feelings and junk that they're going through. So
Hello.
just keep that in mind.
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
th-
Hello.
yeah,
And I think that there are people that can take that to the extreme. So that's the intention of this mistake, is that don't also understand that you have feelings and don't shove them down. Maybe don't
right.
share them with your child, but be sure that you are processing it and discussing it with safe and trusted advisors. So, and then
Eh,
lastly, Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I just have to say one more thing there because on the flip side of that, it is, again, this double edged sword and like moderation and knowing your kid because there's something to be said for, and we say this all the time, like kids learn best by watching what we do. So there's something to be said also for them watching us handle our emotions in a healthy
In a
way
healthy way.
and learning to sit with whatever you're feeling. And maybe this isn't the case because it involves them directly, but I'm just saying it also, it's not like you have to be like a rigid, like, oh, I'm put on a happy face, nothing bothers me. You know what I mean? There's like a fine line there.
Yeah, there is. And I think just thinking through how you want to show up in the last 30, 60 days is important as far
Yep.
as your emotional, what you're wearing on your emotional sleeve, so to
Agreed.
speak. All right. And then lastly, forgetting to plan for your own well being after the transition. So, again, we're here to help you remember that you have your own transition that you're preparing for. And it's important to start now and not wait. And I do think that starts with knowing what your needs are and reconnecting and rediscovering who you are outside of this role as mom, which is not ever going away. Hopefully, you're always going to be a mom, but you are getting, you know, relocated to a seasonal work now, and you've been laid off, so to speak. And so you have time to, thank goodness, to process what it is that you want to do next and what your identity will be now and will shift into. And that's where finding that sense of purpose, that new sense of purpose, one that can hopefully give, use your talents to give back to the world, to help change the life of someone, whether that's a family in your neighborhood that you can volunteer your time to help out with their kids because you're just you loved being a caregiver,
Mm.
or that's you going back to school, or you to learn how to be a nurse or something where you want to change lives in that way, or um, starting a business or a nonprofit, or whatever that thing is that speaks to you, that wakes your soul up, that taps into your passions, your strengths, and your values. um, Taking that time to just spark that and seeing that as a reality and an opportunity.
Yeah, that's great. And I would say definitely don't wait. Be proactive with your self-care. So don't wait to take care of yourself until after they leave. You should really be doing that like now.
Yeah.
And just in preparation, whether that looks like prioritizing your sleep or taking time for a hot magnesium bath every once in a while, even a massage, walking alone, like whatever that looks like, just to keep you more connected and grounded. Don't wait until they leave to start putting some of those things into place. And we probably should have mentioned this in the last episode. If you didn't listen to the goals framework episode, go back because this is another reason why now is a good time to pull that goals framework out or start it if you haven't, because it will take, sometimes it's good to take some negative energy you're feeling and focus it in a positive, more healthy way. So you can sort of redirect some of that, oh my gosh, what do I do now? My child's leaving, to like, oh, let me start laying the groundwork here for what it is that I do want to do in the coming months, you know?
That's really, really good. That's really good. Yep. Self care now,
Yep.
practicing that.
Yep.
And that can be really tempting to be like, I'll deal with that when after they're
Right.
gone. I'm so into them and what they need, and I'm so tuned into that. And I think that's a big pitfall, because when that time comes, you're going to be so out of sync with your own needs, and your body's going to be so deficient in
Yep.
that self care that you could potentially fall apart. And
That's
we
right.
don't want that, because in that emotional upheaval, you need to be strong. And that it's that self care that will help, galvanize you and make you more resilient to get through that.
It's so important. Like, are you moving your body every day? Are you eating well? Are you like staying away from too much sugar or things that, and like all of these little things that we do day to day that help us deal with, again, we can't change. We're not, the kids are leaving home. It's a part of life. It's a stressful time. There's plenty of stress. You can't live in a stress free bubble. That's not living. So it's like, what are you doing day to day to make sure that you handle all of the stressful things that are going on in a really positive and
Yeah.
healthy way?
This next point I think is really important. So we're off of the mistakes, and now we're sort of on to some of the to dos and
Okay.
important things to consider. But if you do have a partner, if you're married, spouse, it's definitely time to have some conversations around what that time is going to look like when your child is up and out, and having that relationship reset talk, so to speak, because there may be a part of you as a couple that needs to relearn how to be together without the kids around and without that, so to quote unquote, buffer. And I think that some planning ahead of that can make that time and that space and that um, reset, or that empty nest transition, a little less awkward,
Mm.
so to speak. So, how do you want to spend your evenings? How do you envision that? And again, just like our conversation we had at the table, what do you expect? What do I expect? And sharing that and seeing where the gaps are, and then finding bridges to come together. So whether that's finding a shared hobby or something that, maybe your husband wants to spend more time doing this and you would like to spend more time doing that, and it keeps you in separate lanes. But on a third leg, you guys can come together and you're going to prioritize some time spent there too to keep that relationship strong.
Yeah, again, I think when you're proactive and you can communicate well, you're going to maybe prevent some issues that could come out up down the road, you know? So that's a really good piece of advice.
Yeah. Yep. Um, and we've talked about this a little bit. We just did a whole episode on it, so go back and listen to last week's episode. But this is during this summer. This is a time, again, because you are focusing on you. Do that goals framework if you haven't done it, and
Mhm.
if you did, make sure you do your check in. But that piece of it, just hammering that home, that setting those goals, setting those intentions, having that vision board, having that awareness of where you are in the pillars of what's important, and then setting some objectives and action around where you want to be, come September or come December, wherever
That's so
that
good.
time frame takes you.
Yeah, it's important. And I would also, just circling back, just something came to mind about your spouse or your partner, whatever it is. I think it's really important to not only talk about like what's the next phase going to look like for you two, but I think it's also very important for you to voice and communicate how you're feeling, because very often it doesn't match up. So, and I think a lot of the times, and I don't think this is your case, Dr. Lynn, because Mark Mau's the weeper over there, probably like losing himself because his daughter's leaving. But I think stereotypically, most of the time, the men don't feel it as much as the moms do, you know? And so, and I think that there could be a tendency for us to feel like maybe neglected or not seen, or like nobody knows what we're going through. And sometimes you just have to voice that, because they just need to be reminded, because they're not feeling it like you do. And then you
And
could
they're
have
not
the
mind
reverse.
readers.
Right. And so it's not fair to expect that. And on the reverse side, they could be feeling it more than you, and maybe you're handling it differently. So I think it's just good to, if you're taking it really hard, check in and let them know, like, hey, I might need a little more grace from you, or a little more TLC or whatever it is, because I'm really struggling. Or if you're handling it well and you see some signs in them, like, how are you feeling? Are you okay? Is there anything I can do to support you? Like, the more you can communicate your needs, and not just assume that everybody around you knows how you're feeling, and even friends should reach out and talk or whatever. The more you can communicate and self advocate, the better.
Yeah, that's really great. We talk. Listen, all unhappiness in life comes from two things. I think when it comes to relationships, it's poor communication or breakdown of communication. And then two is expectations that were set that were not met. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that sometimes on both of that, I know in this empty nest transition in this summer, we're dealing with both of those things heavily. So, especially when it comes to your spouse, and you want that to be successful, right now is the time to communicate on that, and asking some questions around. We just gave some examples. Are there anything else that you would like? Can you think of some things or some ways to reset or communicate with your spouse, that other than child centric, thinking about come September, how the relationship will look?
Like communicating what?
Yeah,
Yeah,
like I think the example I gave was, how do you want to intentionally sense how do you envision we spend our weekends or
yeah,
our days, or what is time going to look like once the house is more quiet?
right.
So that's a big one. Spending time together.
Yeah, I think it could be as simple too as like, you no longer, if you had family, so maybe you had family meals. In our house, everybody's always running in other directions. There's sports, something going on. So we did very little of that. But now is that settling down? Maybe it's just a simple conversation of like, hey, we should like make a point to make sure we're together for dinner every night. And maybe 1 or 2 nights a week we go out or we order in or we want to, watch a movie together and whatever it is that'll help meet your need. Cause it's very common and normal, I think, to feel a little lonely, especially in the quietness of the house. And the fact of the matter is, if you have a spouse or you're married, some of us don't, but if you do and you're fortunate enough to have that, like you still have somebody there in your house and you might need to reconnect with them.
Yes, that's great. I love that. And our other point about going and doing the goals framework, involve them, involve your spouse. I think it's so
Mm,
powerful to do that. I mean, I shared the story of Mark and I and how we've been doing that for years, and they can certainly do it on their own or maybe not at all, but involve them in that process, because shedding sharing a vision and setting a shared vision together can be so powerful and so connecting, so impactful in reconnecting, and bridging any gaps that you guys might have after doing this, running life
yeah.
parallel with the kids in the middle.
Yeah, and I would say to that end, one of the pillars that we have on that, or areas that we have on the goals framework is like travel and fun. So it might be a good. I actually highly recommend like have one thing at least planned that you're going to do like in the early fall after your child leaves, like something that you can look forward to, whether that's with a girlfriend or some girlfriends, or you make a plan with your spouse, like maybe you're going to go somewhere for a long weekend, or maybe you're just there's a show coming to town, a concert, or like my husband and I are going to see Steve Martin and Martin Short in the fall. Like there's many different things you could do, something to look forward to and just a way to set the tone for, because again, if you're not intentional about it, you end up, I think, can run the risk of kind of sitting around and feeling sorry for yourself
Yeah,
instead of
absolutely.
how can we make this a really positive experience,
Yeah,
and
I
shift your
mean,
mindset.
yes. I mean, it's if we are not careful, we're going to look at this as just a loss,
Yeah,
right? Instead of reframing that as there's a lot of freedom here, and now we just need to decide what we're going to do with it.
so good.
Yeah.
Just
All
like
right.
who was it? Oh, Kaya, when we had her on. I can't wait to be in a place in my life where I can just say Wednesday nights are my movie night and I'm going to the theater. If you want to join me, fine. If not, I'm going by myself. Like,
Isn't that beautiful? Yeah,
yeah, it's very
that's stuck in my brain
there are
too.
just so many different ways that you can start to think about what you want to do with your life. It's kind of exciting. It can be very exciting if you will allow it to be,
Mm.
just depends on how you want to focus on it. But I highly, highly, highly recommend, if this is your first or even your last, like have something planned within that first month, and get out of your four walls. If you can afford to go away and do it, or if it's just something that's local, whatever it is, with a friend, with your spouse, a family member, just so you have something to look forward to that's a distraction, but also be like on the other side of leaving them, like it's just a pattern interrupt. It's just a way to, and if you're
Yeah,
with
I
someone
think
you're
it
close with,
boils down to just having something to look forward to
yeah,
instead of just having, oh, this is the end of an era.
yeah,
No, this is where we drop off and then we're going home and then we're now looking forward to this, which is that trip or that.
right.
And that's not to say it won't make it any less difficult, but it will give you that glimmer of of fun and excitement in having something else to look forward to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And by the way, every every school has, it's like you drop them off and then all of a sudden it's parents weekend and you're seeing them again. And then shortly after that it's fall break, and so it's not as, um
Dramatic.
again, yeah, it's that just unknown. And so when I went into it, it just felt so scary, but having done it now twice, it's like, okay, it feels a lot worse, I think, than it actually is.
Yeah,
So,
I think I would speak for the women. And again, this isn't necessarily my personal experience, but we hear this a lot in our community. Speak for the women who maybe their child isn't going to college, maybe they're going to boot camp, or,
yeah.
they're moving to a new
Sure.
country or doing something else. So everybody's situation is different,
That's right.
but all of these same principles apply.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, I think that's really important to point out because some of our kids are not going to school and coming back. They're leaving. Some of them are getting married and moving. I can't even imagine that day. Whew. Mama, three boys.
right.
Yeah. Yeah. But
Well,
you know, it's part
reframe
of
it.
life.
Gaining, you're not losing a son, you're gaining a daughter,
Yeah.
perhaps, hopefully.
Yeah, for
Yep.
sure. That's true. Always reframe it. And at the end of the day, I always have my dogs. It's just, she just
There you
came
go.
over for some love. So it
And
made
at
me
the end
think
of the
of
day,
it.
yeah,
She's like, Mom, time's up. I've been in here for almost 2 hours and we need to wrap it
I
up.
know. We did 3 episodes today, and I think that's a sweet spot for me
Yeah.
too. So,
Yeah. So how are you feeling overall? Are you feeling pretty good where you are right now with like, can you share some of that? Are you,
I am just being carried along on that wave. You're just, I think in the next couple of weeks, I'll have a little bit more time for reflection and my own needs, but it has been pretty bang on, like attention on deck with graduation parties. Um, well, and our graduation party started so early on. So it was that whole month of May. And then dance hit in the whole, and pretty much took up the whole month of June. So I'm really just getting there now. But I think I think all I can say is it's the only part that I haven't loved is just how fast everything goes. And you certainly cannot slow that down except to try and be pretty present in the moment. I do think that that helps. And just, it's just a little disconcerting, like, oh, well, we saw this, we saw that. And now most of those things are in the rear view mirror. And um,
yeah.
yeah, we're at the peak of the roller coaster and the fun is about to happen.
Well, that's exciting. You're in a good spot then.
No, I'm certainly, I'm sure I have my moments. And again, I've always been a little bit in denial that I'm like, I saw a quote the other day. It's like, I did not think that getting older personally would happen to me. It's like, did not think that my child leaving home would personally happen to me. So we'll see come September, but I think we're all getting more used to it, and the preparation of it, I think, is somewhat helpful. Like walking all the steps and doing the orientation and registering for the class and buying the things for the dorm. Those things can kind of feel a little therapeutic because you still have a little control there,
Hmm.
and you'll know what their space is set up
Yeah.
and how it's set up, and yeah, and then it's just trusting your child and
Yeah.
keeping busy and finding more purpose, all the things we talk
Yeah.
about, more time for self-care. So
Yeah, those things are good. You're right, because you're still able to parent, right? You're still acting as parent there, so it's helpful. And all those that busyness and distraction to some extent is good too, because it keeps you, yeah,
yeah,
thinking about other things. So, yeah, it is what it is. I can't believe it's already July. Time is flying
July
by. Life is flying
1st.
by.
It is. Yep. So savor every moment,
That's right.
ladies.
Yep. Make sure you're being present. Do novel things. That's one of the tips that you've given in the past. Elicit your senses. Just make sure you're being as present and mindful as possible so it doesn't fly by and you're not at the end of August going, what just happened?
Yep.
Which is so typical.
Yeah, it's when you're too busy going from one thing to the next, that's when it flies by. But when you're doing intentional, newly, when you're doing new things, I guess I would say, is when your brain slows down for a minute or two. So that's where that summer bucket list can help. Pack in some fun things that you've always wanted to try. And who knows, maybe you'll continue with some of those things when your child is out of the house. Um, you could try a new hobby together. Like maybe you've never played pickleball. So take your teenagers and go and do it. And then you might realize you do love it. And then you can do more of it in the fall.
Yeah, there you go. I love it. All right, ladies. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you're all weathering any of you that have a child leaving home for whatever the reason. Hope you're weathering that ride and that storm well. Um, Make sure you're following us on all the social media feeds, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. If you prefer to watch us, we're on YouTube. The website is www.lifeafterkids.com, where you can find all of our resources, including the book, the Life After Kids book. I hope you have a wonderful day and an even better week.
Enjoy the rest of the summer, ladies.